I couldn't even get a job at a bike shop. That's when I realized that I am unemployable, where I knew it had to be bikes. And it just clicked. Within 6 weeks, I made my first 150 bucks. Hey bike farmers, thanks for clicking in. In this video, I'm gonna tell the story about how I achieved my lifelong goal of making a living fixing bicycles, just like this one you see here. So hopefully I'll never have to have a job again for as long as I live. I'm really hoping that this video reaches some people who are considering taking the leap into self-employment themselves and maybe starting their own lifestyle business. Now, if that's you, I think you're gonna get a lot more out of this video than my typical viewer who are here to watch me fix bikes. And if you are here to watch me fix bikes, that's great, because I'm gonna fix this bike. And while I'm fixing it, I'm gonna ramble on and on and on and tell my life story so you finally get the answer of what the heck is a bike farmer anyway, and who the heck is Andy Q. Now, before I get into all that, let's talk about this bike and why I chose it for this video in particular. So if you go back in my videos like 2 years ago, I had a bike just like this one. I wanna say it was blue, but I did a video on it, very poorly edited, just kind of threw it out there when I was figuring out the channel, but I got a lot of comments. For whatever reason, that bike and that video really struck a chord with people. People were like, hey, I've got one of those, or hey, do you know where I can find a Trek 3700? I mean, I had people emailing me about the specific bike. Now, there's nothing fancy about this bike, but it is a very good bike. Just typical bike farmer bike philosophy, where it's just perfect in all the right ways. 26-inch mountain bike wheels, it's got a little shock, upright riding position, makes for a great all-arounder right out of the box, general purpose bike. These are great ones to resell on Facebook Marketplace or like I do at my bike shop. So I think it's a perfect example of what I do and my philosophy and how it's worked for me. So it really fits into this video. Not only that, it's complete. Everything seems to be working. It's one of those that just kind of was bought and sat. It's really filthy. So the typical bike farmer tune-up of clean, lube, and adjust should take care of everything. I don't need to replace any parts. Hopefully, I know, famous last words, I'm not gonna run into any problems. This is the video I've always wanted to make. I think there's a lot to get out of this one. Go ahead, kick back, relax, and I'm gonna get started. All right, per the usual, get everything in little here. Disconnect the rear brake. I'm gonna pop these wheels off and set them aside. So, starting from the very beginning, I was born in March of 1977, and that was just a few months after Trek Bicycle was started, just 10 miles that way. Trek is located in Waterloo, Wisconsin, which is the town north of Lake Mills, Wisconsin, where I live and where my shop is. And I think I only mention that because I kind of find it interesting from a timeline standpoint. Like, I just think there's something about bikes and me that are inseparable. And that's kind of why I made the thumbnail say, I am the bicycles. So I guess, you know, the largest bicycle brand in the world, I think, is still Trek, was born at the same time I was. I think it's notable. My first bike was one that I rescued, believe it or not, from my grandpa's tool shed. It was an old Sears thing. It was a 16-inch kid's bike with solid rubber tires. And pulled it out and rolled it, and the front solid tire fell right off the bike. It had cracked all the way through, and it needed to be fixed before it could be ridden. Now, I didn't even know how to ride a bike at this point, but I was determined, and so I found my grandpa or my dad or somebody, and they got me some duct tape, and they kind of held the tire around while I duct taped around it, and we just duct taped it, and the bike rolled, and it was good enough for who it's for. And then I talked my dad into throwing it in the trunk, and we took it home that night after visiting Grandpa. And that week, I asked my dad if he'd teach me how to ride a bike. And of course, because most good dads teach the kids how to ride bikes, he took me out, and we had this like tree lawn that kind of went downhill a little bit into the neighbor's yard. And it was perfect because I was a little afraid to like fall and skin my knee. And so he'd start me on the tree lawn and push me, and I'd kind of go coasting down into the yard and then tip over. And after a few times of doing that, I kind of figured out how the bike balanced, and I could go until I lost momentum. And then my dad told me to start pedaling, and I would kind of timidly pedal, and while I coasted. And then he's like, okay, now pedal harder. And I did, and I felt that propulsion for the first time. And I was like, holy crap, my legs can make this machine make me go faster. And then I did it, and I was like, whoa, 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 and as soon as I got it, my dad saw it. And he's like, go, 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 and so I kept going all the way across the neighbor's yard. And then I hit their driveway, and I was like, oh my God, if I fall here, it's really gonna hurt. And I got freaked out and just kept going, and I rode straight into my neighbor's bush. And I, scraped up my face, like I crashed into a bush on my very first bike ride. I was feeling really good about things up until that point. And the thing I felt best about was when I fixed that bike and made it rideable again. Thinking back on it, when I was thinking about this video and everything, I think that was the very moment that I learned that I like fixing them more than I like riding them. That's something you've heard me say. Now, as I've gotten older, sometimes when I'm on a bike ride, I'm like, there's no way I like fixing bikes more than what I'm experiencing right now. But for the most part, it's still true. I really, truly love fixing bikes. It's just something I love to do. I outgrew that bike in about a week, and my sister had a little bit bigger bike. She had a 20-incher, and I would ride that, and it fit me better, and my parents knew it. So that spring for my birthday in March, they took me downtown Lake Mills to, you guessed it, Gibbs Bike Shop. So we go into Gibbs Bike Shop, and I saw the bike that I wanted. It was a red Tracker Freestyle, and I've got a blue one. I found it on Facebook Marketplace a number of years ago, locally. So I have a blue one here, which is my first bike. But I remember walking through that door that's right over there for the first time and hearing the creak of the spring and the ding of the bell and smelling the tires and the grease. That first time you ever walk into a bike shop, a lot of people remember that. And I know a lot of local people here in Lake Mills remember that specific experience at Gibbs. It was kind of dark and anyway, I was home. It was, I wanted to be no other place on earth. I loved the bike shop. I was probably 6, maybe 7. My neighbors next door, the ones that I crashed into their bushes, there were 2 boys that lived there, and they were a year or 2 older than me. And they were bigger and stronger and older and better bike riders, but they, with their friends, would play kids on mini bikes. I just remember, let's play kids on mini bikes. And they had made little dirt tracks in the woods across the street, and we would race around on our bikes, and they would go off jumps and stuff, and I would just kind of ride over them. I was never much of a cyclist, but had a lot of fun doing that on that dirt bike. And then I outgrew it, and we had to go get my first big boy bike. So we drove into Madison and went to Budget Bicycle Center in Madison, and I got a Ross Compact, which was a 24-inch bike. And I remember it being sold to us as the in-between size between adult bikes and kids bikes. And I felt pretty good about it because it meant I was becoming a big boy. And I liked how that felt. They made me feel special at the bike shop. I remember getting pulled over. I rode that bike to school. I was so happy. And I was riding in the elementary school, so I must have been 4th or 5th grade. I think I was probably about 10 or 11. It would make sense with the size too. But I got pulled over by the cops one morning. They pulled over a kid for running a stop sign. I still do that, by the way. I'm a big fan of the Idaho stop. I'm gonna do whatever I think is safest. And if it means running a stop sign, I'm gonna do it. Don't tell me what to do. I'm Andy Quant, and I do what I want. That's what I told the cops then, and I've had the reputation in town ever since. None of that's true. I remember getting in trouble that night. They told my parents, somebody saw it happen, and I got in trouble at dinner. But I became a bicycle misfit at an early age too. So that was the Ross Compact at 10. And then a couple years later, I needed a job. I was 13, and I started wanting things. And my parents said, we don't have any money, so you're gonna have to get a job. And I was thinking about all the places in town that would be cool to work at, and I was like, well, I want a new bike. I want a trek bike. By this time it was 1990, and mountain bikes were a big thing. Before this one, but the steel Trek Antelopes and multi-tracks. And I wanted one. One of my friends got one, and so I went down to the bicycle clinic which that's that sign. The bicycle clinic was downtown Lake Mills, and they were a local Trek dealer. And walked in there and I said, hey, I'd like a job. And they kind of laughed because they didn't even pay themselves. Because you can't make a living having a bike shop in Lake Mills, Wisconsin, 10 miles south of Trek headquarters, especially selling Treks. Nobody can afford to be a Trek dealer. I've got all kinds of ways of saying this. But they said, hey, I tell you what, if you want to learn about bikes, you can stick around and sweep the floors and help out and learn a few things. And we'll give you employee discounts so you can get your bike cheap. So I got a paper route, did that for a little bit to pay for the bike, and but I spent that whole summer, I think I was 13 years old, every chance I had, I was at that bike shop learning how to fix bikes, learning everything about bikes. They took me mountain biking. I owe so much to those guys for giving me that opportunity. Looking back on it now that I'm almost 48 now, what an incredible thing they did. I mean, I've tried to repay it or like pay it forward and find a kid in town like that here, and it just hasn't happened yet. It's baffling to me because I mean, it's literally all I ever wanted was a job at a bike shop in my early teens, and I'd allow a kid to hang out and learn something here, but it just has not panned out. Oh, hey, look at that, guys. Here's the first surprise. This cable is frayed. We're gonna have a stubborn one too. Here we go. So I got a Trek 830 Antelope, a gray one. I also, my dad ended up buying a bike, and I can't remember who else, and we used to go on these bike rides after dinner. So I got kind of into cycling a little bit then, but I still liked fixing them more than riding them. And then, I was about 13 then, so a couple of years of doing that, and then I got my driver's license at 16, and I didn't ride a bike until I went to college. I know I skipped over a part. After a couple of years of hanging around the bike shop, I did finally upgrade to my first fancy bike. I got a Trek 970. It was second at the top of the line. The 990 came with suspension. I didn't think I needed suspension. I still don't think I need suspension. So I just bought the one underneath. Very cool bike. I wish I had one in my size today, a purple one. If I ever find one, I'd buy it, just for nostalgia. Man, that was tough to get out of there. You can see where it's frayed, way up here. It's shot. Never rode, once I got my driver's license, I didn't see any need to ride a bike. I developed a social life. I was always out in Madison going to concerts. Just none of my friends rode bikes anymore. Just wasn't a thing. Went to college, brought that 970 to college thinking I'd ride it around campus. Found it was easier to walk. So my whole freshman year of college, that bike hung in my closet in the dorms. I never even rode it. I went on a couple bike rides once with a guy early on, and that was it. There we go. So after my freshman year of college, I moved back home that summer, and I lasted about a month. I had a number of friends who had stuck around in Madison, so I was able to find a couch to surf on for the rest of the summer. And I went in and I remembered Budget Bicycle Center from when I got that Ross Compact. And I went in there and applied for a job and said I was a bicycle mechanic because I had worked at this bike shop in Lake Mills when I was a kid. And they hired me as a bicycle mechanic. And I still remember it was one of my first days, maybe my first day on the job, and somebody came in with a flat tire, and I was fixing the flat and was really struggling, as so many amateur mechanics or DIY mechanics do. I was really struggling to get the tire back on and seated properly. And the owner, Roger is his name. I know that there are viewers out there that are aware of Budget Bicycle Center and Roger. And anyway, he was walking by and I asked him for help. I was like, hey, can you give me a quick hand with this? And he looked at me and he goes, if you don't know how to fix a flat tire, I don't know why I just hired you. And he didn't. It was his manager that hired me, but I was like, whoa, what am I dealing with? And I'm like, this guy's an asshole. I kind of like him. And I did. I really enjoyed working for him. We got along swimmingly for many, many years. And man, that guy taught me so much. And he taught me by just giving me bikes. I started out primarily refurbishing used bikes, just like this. They were older, obviously. This one wasn't even born yet. So I started out doing all the used bikes. They call them blue tags now over there. And he would give me the worst of the worst, and I'd just have to figure out how to make them work. I learned so much, just so much. It was incredible. I knew the guys that were assembling bikes were making more money than me, and so I wanted that. So I eventually worked my way up into doing that, but it got boring. Doing the same thing over and over again with new bikes. It just wasn't interesting. There's no problem solving. You're just assembling bikes. So I didn't really like that. Then whenever he sold a bike, new or used, it came with some free tune-ups. So there were these no-charge tune-ups, and back in the day, we'd have to get them all done by 6 o'clock the next day. So sometimes we'd come in and have 25 tune-ups and have to crank them out. There was just 2 of us doing them. So I got really good at tuning up bikes like this that are in relatively good shape and just need cleaning, lubing, and adjusting. And I developed a process and got really good at it. And then eventually, I always thought that like the pinnacle of the budget bicycle universe as a mechanic was getting into paid repairs. He really needed to trust you as a mechanic if you were gonna be charging money for the repairs. And eventually I worked my way up to being a paid repair mechanic. And this was all in the late 90s, early 2000s, like through college. And I like being at the bike shop more than I like going to college. So it took me 5.5 years to get an English degree. Yeah, I was also pretty good at selling bikes. Early on I started in the new bike. The shop is kind of weird, but I was in the new bike section. But I'd always get called down to the used bike store to sell bikes, and it was always fun to be with the customers and be like, hey, I fixed this one. I'd sign the tag and know that it was one that I'd refurbished, and I could tell them all about it. And that's a big part of what I do now is, I'm like, oh yeah, I worked on this bike, when I'm selling my own, bikes that I'm flipping at the shop. Well, eventually I graduated from college, and I was wanting a real job, as one does when they graduate from college, and working at the bike shop and really enjoying my life. But I didn't have any money. That's the problem here, right? Like so many bicycle mechanics everywhere, they're passionate and skilled and love their work. But working at a bike shop, you just don't get paid enough. You can't make a good living. The lifers that I know all have a partner, spouse, somebody else that's helping pay the bills or gets the health insurance or something like that. And I didn't have that. So I cut my hair. That was the last time I had a ponytail. It was back then. And I cut my hair and got a real job. Now, I have had some real jobs. I know. I survived. You don't have to feel that bad for me. And they were awesome. My first job out of college was working for a company called Alphalite. It was technology that came out of the university. They sold high-powered semiconductor diode lasers. I got a job as a technical writer. Very quickly, it was a startup and very technical and hands-on, and they knew that I had some mechanical ability and, like working with my hands. So I started testing prototypes and doing quality assurance stuff. It was just a really cool environment, being in a startup environment. I got to go up to Montreal. Really cool place. The bottom fell out as a startup, and everybody got laid off, and I survived a bunch of rounds, and my attitude sucked. And one day I got really mad at one of the bosses in the cube farm and screamed and yelled and threw a fit and got fired. That's kind of how I do it, I guess. Anyway, so back to the bike shop. I was in between jobs, and I'd always go back to the bike shop and just love it. Actually, while I had that job, I was moonlighting at the bike shop too. Hung around with bike shop guys, and it was always bike shop, fix bikes. That's all I wanted to do. I was back at the bike shop for a season or two. I can't remember exactly. In between jobs, and then I was talking to my dad one day, and he ran a chemical distribution company. Is what my dad did, and he was looking for a sales guy. And I'm like, what did the sales guys do? I think we were out playing around to golf, and he's like, well, they kind of travel around and play golf and drink. I'm like, I'm good at that. He's like, I think you are good at that. And so I was a sales rep, outside sales rep for high purity toxic chemicals, selling into the semiconductor world, into pharmaceutical, some food, just high tech, anything that's like high tech, high purity, or like really hazardous is what we focused on, or custom blending, that stuff. Another very interesting job, really good money. But I was just drinking so much and carrying on, and it was just not healthy for me. Not a good fit spiritually. And, I didn't think about bikes a whole lot during that time, but, it threw me for a loop. And I got married and had kids and, all that. And eventually it kind of led to, let's be honest, it was a midlife crisis. But I ended up total collapse. Like everything in my life just fell apart. But I emerged sober. This was 13 years ago. And I quit that job and bought a business that failed and really over leveraged myself, made some terrible financial decisions that I'm finally, are behind me, thank God. Really rough period of my life. I learned a lot. I didn't check that wheel for true. Did I? Get talking. I'm telling you, it was a colossal, existential, professional crisis. Like, I was, and this is like the important thing here is, it was like rock bottom professionally. I mean, it was rock bottom in a lot of ways. It was like, what do I want to be when I grow up? And I was 35 years old by this time. And necessity is the mother of invention. I tried a few things on just to survive and get through it. In 2014, I was back at the bike shop for a season and absolutely loved it. And the guys I worked with, they taught me about randoneering, and they were all bike tourers, and they had these cool touring bikes with these racks and these bags. And the bike, I was out of the bike thing for like 10 years, and bikes had changed so much between, like 2004 and 2014, basically. I knew a little bit about what was going on, but really a lot changed through the Lance Armstrong era, basically. And it was a whole different world. And I really gravitated towards those older style touring bikes and, randoneering bikes and the long distance, getting lost, like the older style cycling, not the newer racy Lance Armstrong stuff. So, and I was surrounded by guys, so that's kind of where a lot of that comes from in my world. But I was doing paid repairs, and I really wanted to be doing the blue tags, but the shop needed help in the repair department, so that's what I did. I thought I was going to be a lifer, but at the end of the summer, Roger pulled me aside and said, sorry, I don't have work for you over the winter. And I was crushed and tried a few things, and that's really when I spiraled down and like went on this job search that was just so soul-sucking. I was looking for sales jobs, for technical jobs, for other kind of mechanic jobs. Like I was gonna like floor sweepers, like Menards. I thought I was a shoo-in for like a lot of this stuff, like road warrior technician type stuff, and they all pay well and would have been a good career path for me. Nobody would hire me. And I never got a real clear answer why. I got my hopes up really high about a software sales, a SaaS, software as a service sales guy. Lots of money in that. And for a company that was like a startup kind of thing that had just moved into Madison, brand new facility, really cool, like fancy coffee makers, ping pong tables, the whole works. I was really excited about it. They brought me in. It felt like they were courting me. And then like 2 days after my interview, I got some random bullshit form email that was like, I'm sorry, but the position you applied for has been filled by a more qualified, there's something canned, and I was crushed. I mean, it was probably the lowest self-esteem I've ever had. I was like, oh my God, I'm unemployable. And so I'm like, I have to work at a bike shop. And it was like coming up on spring. So I applied at the closest bike shop to Lake Mills. It was like 10, 15 minutes away. I was like, well, they got to hire me. I'm like, there's no bike mechanics around here. And they didn't. I couldn't even get a job at a bike shop. That's when I realized that I am unemployable. Like I said, I had already jumped into self-employment, and it didn't work. And at that time, I was just like, man, I just want something stable. I just want a paycheck. I couldn't find one. I could not find a paycheck for the life of me. And so, my hand was forced. I got with a life coach. Just filling out the intake to get that initial phone call with the life coach was enough to trigger something in me where I knew it had to be bikes. Like whatever it was bikes. And so I had a friend, my friend Matt Nelson, who's probably watching this. We went out for lunch, and he was kind of working in the local Madison entrepreneurial scene. And he's like, hey, what I keep hearing at these events or these speakers is what entrepreneurs do is they're not like really selling something or creating anything. They're solving problems. So you got to think, what is the problem in the bike shop world that nobody's solving? Like, what are people dealing with that hasn't been dealt with? that isn't happening in Madison. And when I was interviewing for the bike shop job locally, I had thought about I'm like, oh, you could get a little pickup truck and pick up and delivery repairs, like within 15 miles of the shop or something, because it's kind of rural out here. And that's how you can get enough customers. And I was like, so I told him about that. And he's like, yeah, totally. He's like, why wouldn't you just set up a shop in your garage and go just do pick up and delivery out of Lake Mills? And then I was like, well, why wouldn't I just bring the tools with me? And then I was like, why wouldn't I just get a Sprinter van? And this was all happening while I was filling out that intake form and whatever. And it just clicked. And I'm like, a mobile bike shop. Came up with the idea all on my own. I swear to God. And then I Googled it. And this was 2016, right around New Year's 2016. I Googled it, and there were two companies out there, Beeline and VeloFix were both franchises that were available for this exact business model. And both of them had found success. Beeline out in Silicon Valley, connecting with employers out there that wanted to do something for their employees to bring bike service to the workplace. So you could have your bike there, either ride it in or bring it with, and have your bike tuned up while you were working, and then you'd have a tuned up bike. And then they would organize bike rides and all that. And I'm like, oh my God, Madison wants that. I had this idea. I was convinced of it. I went begging and crawling on my hands and knees to my dad because I was flat broke. He gave me a little business loan, a friends and family business loan. A lot of small businesses start that way. It was just barely enough. I had to come up with a business plan. I had to do all the homework and prove that it was viable. And he bought it. And I went out and bought a Sprinter van for, I want to say I paid 12 grand for my first van. I'm like, good luck finding a Sprinter for 12 grand now. I'd have to pay 30 for the same van. I got really lucky with the timing. Within 6 weeks, I was swiping my first card in a driveway downtown Madison. I tuned up a bike and made my first $150, and I was off to the races. I did 275 tune-ups out of that van in Madison, competing with the biggest shops in town, competing with my friends at Budget Bikes, taking their customers. It was a rock solid idea, and it was just because I had solved the problem of schlepping a bike to and from the bike shop. And I had an absolute blast that whole summer doing it. Very quickly I learned, and I was in a lot of garages, and I very, very quickly picked up on the fact that there are bikes like this one hanging up on hooks. Unwanted bikes, kids that have moved out, whatever. There's just unwanted bikes in garages all over the place. Unbelievable. And I would ask people, I'm like, what do you want with that? And they're like, oh, we don't know what to do with it. And I said, well, I'll tune up this bike if you give me that bike. We'll just work a trade. And I would do that. And so I started amassing a little small collection of used bikes that I could flip, but I had no place to flip them. So I went searching for a little retail space here in town and found one. I still have it. It's just down the way here. We call it the Annex. I use it for storage now. The wheels are good. Made a little showroom, kind of moved in, and I called it Gibbs Bike Shop. I came up with the logo, same logo that you see everywhere around here. I reopened Gibbs Bike Shop. This would have been in July. And I usually skip this part of the story because I just kind of forget that I even did it because it becomes so irrelevant. But I was never there. I just had my number on the door, hey, if you're looking for a bike or you want a tune-up. And I would tune up bikes here or there. I had a stand set up. But mostly it was the bike mobile is what I was doing. And it was just kind of a place to keep bikes and sell them. And I sold a couple of them, and it was great. And then one day I was out in the bike mobile, and I got a text from my ex-wife who had become a realtor in town. And she said, you'll never believe it, but the Gibbs Bike Shop property just came on the market. This would have been in that August. So I started the bike mobile in March, and by August or September, it's about 6 months later, this property came on the market. Now, just to fully clarify, I have a 17-year-old son, and so my bike business is only 2016, whatever that is, 8 years old. But my son's name is Gibson, and I named my son Gibson so I could call him Gib after my childhood bike shop, which now that building became on the market so I could buy it and have it be my life. It's so serendipitous, right? I mean, it's just weird. Every time I think about it, it's just, anyway. It's serendipitous. And I was like, okay, so it's on the market. I'm like, can we go look at it like tonight? And me and the kids were living in this tiny little 2-bedroom house. They were sharing a room. I knew that I'd need to get them a place with their own rooms very soon, and that had 3 bedrooms. So we each got our room, and I put in an offer the next day and with a letter saying, you can't sell this to anyone else. This is divine intervention, and do not mess with God. And they were like, you got it, whatever, just figure it out, you know, we're here for you. You know, that's small town stuff. You gotta love it. Like, we're all in it together. It's great. Yeah, a few months later, you know, I was able to get the funding together and work a deal and made it happen. Yeah, so that was November. Also, one of the problems with having a bike shop in the northern climate is our season is so short. We only have like 5 months. So I needed to find something to do over the winter. I was just talking one day, talking to some people in Madison that were kind of in the cycling advocacy world. And one of them mentioned this organization in Minneapolis that was expanding to other cities called Free Bikes for Kids. And I talked to Terry Esau, who was the founder of Free Bikes for Kids in Minneapolis, and we totally hit it off. And I said I could start that program in Madison this winter. And I connected with a few key players. We raised barely enough money. And so as I was moving in here, and, you know, the Bikemobile kind of got parked just because it was cold and nobody was scheduling appointments anymore. And I was moving in here and opening up a bike shop. I was also starting a nonprofit, and we collected, like, I can't remember exactly the numbers. I think we collected 650 bikes right after New Year's. And in 10 weeks, we tuned up about 400 of them and gave them all to the Boys and Girls Club of Dane County in Madison, and gave them all away in 2 days. And Free Bikes for Kids Madison was born. And you've seen other videos of the charity. It's now called Bikes for Kids Wisconsin. It's a little bit different the way they're doing things now, but that's all off of that venture as well. But I raised just enough money to pay myself like the bare minimum of being able to pay my bills that winter. But I was able to start everything. Like, it was like eating scraps. I mean, I wasn't making a ton of money, but it was working, right? It was enough to keep me going. That's the thing, it wasn't like right out of the gates money. It took a while. Hey guys, it's Future Andy. This is after the bike's all done and everything. I am just going to insert this right here in the video because this is where it fits into the timeline. Can't believe I got all the way done and forgot to answer the most important question in the entire universe. Here you go. I got one strap off my apron here. I was just about to put this whole thing to bed, and I was like, oh my God, I never answered what the heck is a bike farmer. So back when I was moving in, so it was that fall when I knew that this property was available. I hadn't quite moved in yet, and I was like trying to put the deal together and figure out what I was gonna do with the space. We were staying with some friends from Chicago who had bought a hobby farm in the Driftless, and they kind of knew a little bit about farming, but you know, they just bought this land and had to make a go of it. And you know, they had animals and some crops, and she was selling baked goods. You know, they just had all these different ways that they were like using what they had, the resources that they had from their land and their buildings and whatever, to monetize their life and just pay the bills and make a life. And I was like, oh, that's what that property is. It's kind of like the bike farm. Then I was like, I'm a bike farmer. And it stuck to the point where I like went and got the license plate and like everything. And so that's where the bike farmer was born, is the concept that every time I put a bike like this in the stand, it's like planting a seed in the ground. And my goal is to make $100 on every bike that I touch. You know, my goal is to make $100 on every bike I see. If I bring it in here, I'm going to make $100 on the bike one way or another. And I don't want it in my life for more than an hour, you know, so $100 an hour, you know, whatever, whichever way I got to do it. It's how I look at it. And I just try to monetize bikes, monetize this space, and whatever I can do in there to monetize and diversify, that's bike farming. I think most successful family farms are done that way, where you just, you know, you're growing hay and selling it, but you're growing hay and feeding your own animals. And, you know, it's just like you use the resources that you have on hand and put your labor and back into it and make it work one way or another. So that's bike farming, that's solopreneurship, that's all of it. And that's the key to the whole thing. And I can't believe I didn't mention it. And I'm not even sure where I'm going to fit this into the video now. Is it just at the end? There was about 3 years of doing that, where I'd do the Bikemobile and Gibbs during the bike season. I would do those two things. That's a sticky free hub. Sometimes this can be difficult to get. I'm just using some one step here. You know, about 3 years of doing that, met some great people, had a blast, and everything was growing a little bit. You know, everything got a little bit easier every day. And this isn't going as well as I want it to be going here. If you spray enough lube on it, it'll just start working on its own, right? See how it's pedaling itself? That's no good. It's got a sticky free hub. It's hard to get lube back in there. Pop the wheel off and get going on it here. Oh, it's a freewheel, not a free hub. Just gonna try to get things working here without taking it apart. Anyway, so yeah, it was 3 years of, you know, consistent, steady, reasonable growth. I was already feeling like I was the most successful person I knew because I didn't need a job and I had it figured out. So for-profit businesses during the summer, make as much money as I can, try to squirrel some away. And then the nonprofit, if I could raise the money, could pay me a little bit to kind of keep the lights on through the winter. And then 2020, the pandemic happened. And that's when I really realized how hard I could work and how much money I could make if I had a big enough market. And man, do I wish I had a bigger market than I had. Actually, I had burnout. I made more money in 3 months during that pandemic, that April, May, and June. Actually, all the way into July and August too. So it was like 4 months. I made more money in those months than I did almost in like the entire season before, probably season and a half before. And that momentum carried on into 2021. So 2020 and 2021, I made over $100,000 fixing bicycles as a solopreneur, independent bicycle mechanic. Just me. I had one employee at Gibbs while I was in the van. So it was just 2 of us. And I had decided I was done with the nonprofit and hired a new executive director like 2 weeks before the pandemic became a thing. It was nuts. She inherited it right during the pandemic. So it wasn't like the pandemic came and I got out. It was I got out and then the pandemic came. So it was good. I didn't have to work over that next winter. I had enough money. I didn't have anything I needed to do. I wasn't locked down to anything. And I didn't have to have a job. I really hate to say it because I know so many people struggled so much and lost family members and lost so much during the pandemic. But for me, it was just about, it was the best year of my life. It's just how it went. And I do feel a little bad about acknowledging that, but it's the hard truth. I just try to be mindful of that. But what I got into was, I was like, I've always wanted an old car. So I got into old cars and I watched YouTube to learn how to fix them. And I'd never watched much YouTube. And I was like, wow, that's amazing. And I had an old Mercedes and found Mercedes Source, Kent Bergma. And he had built a whole business out of YouTube and selling kits, repair kits for old Mercedes-Benz. There's a whole market. His videos were great. He was a real character. And I just would watch his videos for hours. But it didn't take me long to realize that old classic cars were not a way to make money and that it was an expensive hobby. So I got a lot of cars working. Like I bought broken cars, got them working, and then resold them and lost a little bit of money, but nothing crazy. And then in 2021, I started playing guitar a lot again, primarily acoustic guitar. And I found some luthier channels that I really liked, primarily Rosa Stringworks and Jerry Rosa. Whatever, I don't know why I liked watching him so much, but I sure did. And I learned so much about acoustic guitars. And I went and I bought a 1980 Gibson Dove with a broken bridge. And I found a video from his channel of him fixing that exact bridge. It's kind of a special thing. And I was on my way down south. Oh yeah, I gotta talk about riding bikes. Man, I gotta go back a little bit. And I didn't start riding bikes until that 3-year period where I was just like steady growth. I got into road biking and randoneering and long distance cycling. It's not part of my professional story, but it was the first time I became a cyclist. You know, it was always about fixing bikes. It was never about riding them. And I learned what road biking and endurance cycling was all about, and randoneering, and started doing it, and bike touring. And that really changed things for me, which was great. And I started going down to Austin, Texas in the winters. And I realized that Jerry Rosa lived right off the interstate in Missouri. If I took that way down to Austin, it would only add like 45 minutes to my drive either way. It was just the other route that Google gives you. Went right past his shop. So I had reached out to Jerry and said, hey, I got this guitar and I know you've done this before. It should make it for a good video. You know, can I drop it off on my way down to Austin? I'm gonna go for this bike ride and then you do it over the weekend and I'll pick it up on my way back. And he said, normally not really, which I can totally relate to now. Like everybody reaches out to me with these great ideas and I'm like, no, not really. He's like, but it actually kind of sounds like you might be onto something. So sure, let's do it. I met him and it was so weird meeting a YouTuber, which now I've experienced it from the other side too. Cause it's like, oh my God, he's kind of quasi famous to me. And I'm like meeting him in person and you know, he's a little bit different than what he is on his channel, but still the same guy and great guy. And I was really curious about the YouTube thing because I had also been taking a nap every afternoon watching Bob Ross. And I started thinking like, oh my God, Bob Ross is like the original watch me work YouTuber guy. He's like Jerry Rosa. I could do this. I could film myself fixing bikes and put it on YouTube and people would watch it just like I watch those guys, which turns out is true if you haven't noticed. So I talked to Jerry about it and asked him how much he makes and how much work it is and kind of learned the basics of YouTube. And I'm like, man, you think I should do it? And he's like, absolutely, just start it. So that's how I got into YouTube. I had Jerry fix my guitar. I met him. I picked his brain a little bit. And it was just enough to give me the confidence that I could just do it. Why wouldn't I just do it? I mean, I just went out and got a van and started my dream bike business that ended up making me $100,000 a year. Why couldn't I just start a YouTube channel too? So I went home and then I went to the camera store and I bought a Sony ZV-1 because that's what the internet told me I should do. Actually, the internet said, before you go out and buy a camera, just use your iPhone. But that wasn't enough for me. I always go get new shit. It's just how I am. Go big or go home. You know, I mean, that was an $800 camera or something. It was an investment, but I've used it for every single bike video that you've seen. I talked to a friend of mine who does some video editing and he showed me a thing or two. He actually edited some of my early videos. I would get the footage, send it to him, he'd edit them and send them back. I was watching like, how do you make a YouTube channel? How do you find success on YouTube? Like, how do you make this work? How does it earn money? I'd watch a lot of those kinds of videos. And if you've ever gone down that road, you'll probably find Ali Abdaal. He said, you gotta make 2 videos a week for 2 years and your life will change. So right now it's end of November 2024 and I started 2 videos a week for 2 years in April of 2023. So I have approximately 4 months, maybe 5 months to go before reaching that goal. And I've been pretty good about it. Like I think I've missed a couple of times. And absolutely, without a doubt, already, only a year and a half into it or whatever, my life has completely changed doing 2 videos a week for 2 years. Just looking at my notes here that I made for this video, and I forgot to mention that in 2022, we really started feeling the whiplash from the pandemic with the supply chain. And you know, prices go up and supply went down. It was really tumultuous, and all of a sudden everybody ended up with too many bikes. So people stopped buying bikes and we had too many of them. It's been really, really tough as shop owners to make money on the retail side of things. I'm lucky because I'm mostly a service shop, but it still was a thing where I was like, I'm gonna need to find another income. So that was also motivating the YouTube, like being successful at YouTube. You know, I don't do this for fun. I'm only in it for the money. It's a joke, but it's pretty true. So this freewheel is still sticky. We're gonna have to replace it. I've got some more yapping to do here. See how it wants to ride itself. It's just a sticky freewheel. I mean, I could maybe free that up. This is a cheapo one. I have a Shimano one on the shelf. I'm just gonna put a new freewheel on this bike. Back out with this wheel, man. It's really giving me the fits. So knowing that the bike business was really gonna not make money, like making $100,000 with the bike mobile and Gibbs was not gonna happen. I knew I needed a second income, and I figured, knowing what I learned from Jerry and watching the numbers of some other channels and a little bit of other encouragement, I decided to just really commit to the YouTube thing. And frankly, I love it. I love being a YouTuber. I love making these videos. It's challenging, it's fun, it's creative, it's all of the things I like. It allows me to, it allows me to ruin tools on camera and be my authentic self, is what I was gonna say, which is a really important value of mine. I learned that at Free Bikes for Kids. We did like an exercise to find our core values, and it's creativity and authenticity, and like YouTube is the place for that. That's what sells, and it's been working, which is great. 1, 2, 3, there we go. It's like going to the chiropractor. Yeah, now the YouTube channel, some of the months has made more money than, I mean, at least here in the fall, it's definitely making more money than I've ever made with the bike thing. It might have been the Dork Disc. So it's kind of becoming the forefront of my business now. It seems like with the Bike Farmer and the Bike Farmer brand and all of that, I could leverage that into an online store. I can make bike fixing videos till the cows come home. And I've got plenty of things to say, as you already know. Some of it has gotten me into trouble already. I'm learning how this works. I'm gonna grease this up, and hopefully if I just kind of clean things here. This Phil's Tenacious oil is kind of magical stuff too. I don't use it a lot, but you know, a bottle like this will last me 5 years. But it's really good for these freewheels. Apparently I'm not replacing the freewheel. Apparently I'm going to reuse this one because it seems to be fine. Part of it is like I don't want to spend the $15 to put a freewheel on a bike. But part of me is like, why replace something when it can be repaired? It's not like a huge value of mine. But. So it was really inconsistent. That feels pretty smooth. It's not like super free flowing, but it's way more better, hey? Oh yeah, back on topic. I was able to monetize after about 6 months. I needed 1,000 subs and 4,000 watch hours, 400 watch hours. I can't remember how that goes. And because the videos I were doing were long form and people would watch the whole thing, they were like an hour long, I was able to get the watch hours way before the subs. I found a Facebook group, the Home Bicycle Mechanics, and I made a post. It was hilarious. I'm like, have you guys seen this Bob Ross of bicycle repair? He's great. You got to check out his stuff. And I got like 300 subs overnight from that post on this big Facebook page. People were like, I think he's the guy. It was great. But it allowed me to monetize. And I had always thought about the best bike video idea of all time. Oh, look at that. What is going on? It is pedaling itself. Huh. Okay, we'll go back over here and you know, this is how it goes sometimes. Anyway, the best bike YouTube video idea was, why are bicycle mechanics such assholes? And this all goes back to that lunch, you know, where I'm like, well, what's the problem with bike shops? And it's just like, nobody likes going to bike shops because the guys in there are so unrelatable. You know, like, and what's that all about? I mean, even me, I like bike shops, but I like the back room with the dirtball mechanics, like not up front with the bros, you know? It's like, what the heck? You know, and I never related to that part of cycling. Like I was never a cyclist, right? That's my unique viewpoint. Yeah, see, I just replaced the spoke protector and it's still sticking. I think it's just this freewheel. And I put that video out and it went viral. So that was 10 days after I monetized. It went viral like overnight. And it got, 100,000 views in a few days, and subscribers just went through the roof. And I had myself a YouTube channel. My first check was over $1,000 from YouTube. Amazing. And that doesn't happen very often. But I firmly believe, I was like, I think the winning formula is like, if you have a passion, figure out what problem needs to be solved and then go solve it. That's the one thing. And I was able to find a really good one. Like, really, you gotta be true to yourself and stick with it and just do the right thing and speak the truth. Don't try to be what everybody else is being, because it's already being done. And when you have a pandemic and you're being like everybody else and you're not curbside before it was cool, you got to adapt somehow, and it makes it really hard, right? But I was like able to just be on it because I already had this good idea. It was different, and that's why I win, is when things get weird, I'm already there. Except in the case of this freewheel, where things are weird and I'm definitely not there. I have zero confidence that this is gonna work. This is the old spoke protector now with a new freewheel. So why are bicycle mechanics such assholes? That video, if you haven't seen it, is a very satirical approach to bike shop life. Whereas basically I'm like, we're not the assholes, the customers are the assholes. And then I made a whole series of videos that are basically that same kind of concept where I just blame all of you for all my problems. I have no personal responsibility here at all. None. It's all you and the algorithm's fault. And, but they're pretty fun videos. Within a couple of days, I got a call from Park Tool, and they're like, we saw your video, we love it. We want you to put our stickers up and we'll give you tools. And I got my first sponsorship. And I was off to the races right out of the gates. Very grateful for all of that. And it's been just a little over a year since that happened. And as of the making of this video, I'm just coming up on 59,000 subs, I think. And just hit a bit of a snag. I got a little too honest about politics during the election, and the algorithm is upset with me. And I'm not gonna talk about it anymore, but I made a big mistake. I put out content that apparently my viewers weren't ready for or wanting. And that's what the algorithm pays attention to, like I should have just kept doing what I do, but I tried something different and it backfired because I'm an idiot, I think. But this video is one that I wanted to make from the beginning. I have always thought that I could maybe have an inspiring channel about solopreneurship, entrepreneurship, working for profit instead of wages. There's some key concepts that I've learned over the years in my life where I just, it can get pretty insane. I watch videos about wage slavery and all these other kind of labor type stuff that is pretty extreme that I don't really get into. But when it boils down to it, like being true to oneself, it's a big part of my sobriety. It's a big part of my professional life. It's just, I think the most successful people in the world are the ones that are doing what they love, doing what they're good at. And not just taking the easy way and cutting their hair and getting a good job. And it's worked for me. So I wanted to share it because it could work for you too. So kind of amazingly, that's the end of my story because we're at current day. And I am just about finished with this bike. I always kind of give it a little wipe down at the end like this. I'm looking at everything just to kind of see if I need to drop some lube somewhere or I don't know what. What I'm left with is the future. What does the future hold for the bike farmer, for Gibbs Bike Shop? I've already closed down the Bikemobile. I don't do it anymore. I've turned that into an adventure van. It's my bike farmer van. It's my work truck. I have a bed that folds out. I can go on adventures. I can go on bike rides, hopefully do some traveling and make some more bike ride videos for you. That sort of thing. That'd be the life, right? Is just travel around, going for bike rides, making videos, but they don't get the views that the actual bike videos do, which is fine because I like fixing them more than riding them, right? I love traveling, and you'll see that. I've got some cool videos out there, South Dakota, the trip to Switzerland, up north, and I don't know, I'm just kind of following my nose, but for the time being, I think I'm excited to not be in the van next summer and just be around the shop, making videos, doing what I love to do and sharing my life with all of you. The amount of gratitude I'm filled with, like I've never experienced this in my life. Like, and this is the sappy part. And I say it at the end of every video, like if you've watched till the end, I just find it amazing that I'm like producing content that people stick with and watch to the end, like 45 minutes or an hour. Like I'm actually doing it, and like you'd actually give me your time like that and your attention. This is the attention economy, and it can be taken for granted by some, and you know, you can be turned into a commodity, and I do my very best to not do that. I mean, my titles and thumbnails are clickbaity, but that's part of the game, and I kind of enjoy making, you know, doing that. I mean, hopefully you know that I'm just doing my best here, and I do think I have something to offer, and the fact that you think that's true is just no way to describe that feeling. So thank you so much for watching. Yeah, like this video, share it, subscribe if you haven't, tell your friends, all of that. You can join the channel, become a member, send me a super thanks. I had somebody send me $200 once. Isn't that amazing? Absolutely amazing. It makes it work. It's working. I love it. So thank you so much to everybody that's watching. I hope that some future entrepreneurs have seen this, and this is all it took for you to say, you know what? Fuck it. I'm gonna quit my job and start my own thing. You know, if that happened, let me know in the comments. Reach out, send me an email. I'm Googleable. If this is what put you over the edge to try it or to start your own channel or anything, that's something I would hang my hat on. So please let me know about it. For yourself, just the littlest thing you can do is click that notification bell so you and your bikes can stay tuned.